It is my pleasure to introduce Rick Hansen this afternoon. As a UBC alumnus, Rick was the first person with a physical disability to graduate with a degree in physical education. The following year, Rick was awarded an honorary doctorate from UBC as well. Currently, Rick is the CEO of the Rick Hansen Foundation and a passionate advocate for people with disabilities in Canada and around the world. As well as being a celebrated Paralympic athlete, he is best known for the Man in Motion World Tour, his epic 2-year marathon in which he circumnavigated the globe in his wheelchair. During the completion of the tour in 1987, Rick dedicated his life to creating a world that is accessible and inclusive for all. In addition to leading a team of passionate difference makers at the Rick Hansen Foundation, he provides support to people with disabilities, spreads hope and inspiration through public speaking engagement, and advises leaders on issues such as today's topic, accessibility and inclusivity. And while many of you may know of Rick or have seen Rick as a Canadian icon through his many speaking engagements, his triumphant television appearances, I myself also know Rick as the quiet man who rolls into the room of a young patient on my ward at VGH who has just suffered a catastrophic spinal cord injury and is lying in bed paralyzed with great fear of what the world that lies ahead exists. And in these quiet, unrecorded moments, Rick provides hope, support, and inspiration in only the way that he can. And so to that end, Rick is thrilled to speak today for UBC's centennial celebrations to talk about the future of accessibility. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Rick Hansen, the Man in Motion.
Incredible introduction. Your personal perspective means a lot to me, and I'll tell you a lot more about Brian and his role in my journey as I go through this presentation. And being here to celebrate the 100th anniversary, and not only the past, at UBC, but also looking to the future, is a tremendous honor. UBC has had a huge influence on my life, and I look forward to being able to tell you a bit of a story of how past meets present and drives forward towards future. As a kid growing up, I had big dreams, and I wanted to be a coach, a teacher. I wanted to be a Paralympian, and after my injury, but it took a while. So that moment when I was actually in the hospital bed at the age of 15 was a pretty traumatic moment. Back then, you got to think about history because, people with disabilities were largely shut out. It was very difficult for someone to have a lot of opportunities in life, and of course, the notion of a cure for spinal cord injury was literally an impossibility. I was told that I would never walk again, and had no idea what life would present itself as I went forward from that day, celebrating my 16th birthday in the hospital bed, wondering what kind of a future was laying in front of me. Fortunately, I was surrounded by some amazing family members, role models, teachers, and of course, people who really invested in me, and they encouraged me to be able to not give up, to be able to set goals and to chase dreams, and to be able to learn that the wheelchair wasn't a stigma of disability or confinement, but it was the beginning of a journey to get back in motion, to be able to learn how to push the chair, to be able to think about what life would be like, to actually move forward and start to chase life, to go after it. And I was reminded, based on my new information as I went on that journey, that nowhere in the definition of an athlete does it say you have to use your legs in order to be one. You could be in a wheelchair, you could be propelled by your heart, you could push forward, and all your goals and dreams would be in front of you. You just had to adapt and think differently. Back then, there was no information technology, there was no Googles, no texting, no ways to magnify the information that existed from champions who were around the world. And so literally my world was transformed one person at a time, one story, one conversation, to be able to open up my frame of reference, to actually populate a blank canvas, a dark canvas of despair, into a colored canvas of hope, of possibilities. And one of the ideas and dreams, of course, was to go to university, to go to UBC, and to ultimately be a phys ed teacher and a coach. And I actually was encouraged to come down to UBC, and I was at first rejected because I wanted to be in phys ed, and no one had actually been in phys ed before in a wheelchair. And I was actually able to take that challenge and see it as an opportunity to educate, to advocate, to show that I would be that first person to break precedent and not just do it for myself but for others, to try to transform an institutional paradigm and start to shift from exclusion to inclusion. And it took people like Dr. Bob Schutz, the faculty of physical education, and people like Buzz Moore and Lionel Pugh, who was my teacher, to continue to systematically help me grow as I came to UBC and went through one of the greatest transformations of my life, which is why it's so powerful when students and faculty members and members of the community come together to share information, to share stories, and to build bridges into new forms of consciousness, which ultimately helps us to be able to grow and evolve as human beings. And I started to grow and evolve dramatically to realize that I could still be the athlete that I always dreamed of, to represent my country in Paralympic sports. And I also learned here at UBC there's a difference between believing you can do anything, that anything's possible, but not everything. And the key to excellence is focus. And I ended up coming out of a Lionel Pugh lecture, with about the same amount of students as in this room, and he just said, sport and athletics is a moment in time, and if you don't commit yourself, you'll always wonder and always have regrets. And so who's giving 100% in your sport? Who can say that you've given everything? And my hand didn't go up, and I came out of that room and I committed myself, and I said, I'm going to be the athlete that I want to be. I'm going to have no regrets and see how far I can go. Interesting at UBC, though, I also found that my attitude about my disability wasn't the only obstacle. It was the attitude of others towards me. Often people looked at me in my wheelchair with pity. They often tried to avoid me, and occasionally there was the odd humorous story where I was late for a class at UBC, moving from Buchanan out to the phys ed gym in the South Campus, and I was blasting as fast as I could up a hill. And as I was going up this hill, there was a young lady who was walking quickly as well, and she picked up her pace to catch up to me, and she was completely out of breath at the top of the hill, and she said, "Excuse me, sir, can I give you a push up the hill?" And I said, "No, but you look tired. Why don't you sit on my lap and I'll give you a ride?" And she saw a guy in a wheelchair, needs help. I saw opportunity, and I thought, oh, she's pretty cute. Maybe what I can do is I can give her my card and give her a call later. And so that was kind of cool. But UBC was a transformation. I did manage to graduate and continue to move forward and to be a Paralympic champion, to ultimately go to the Olympic Games, to win a Paralympic gold in marathon, and to be at the podium celebrating that great moment, feeling grateful, and also knowing that in classic form, sport isn't just about taking, it's about giving back. And my experiences in sport, traveling the world, made me realize that my experience wasn't the only one. There were thousands of people with disabilities all over the world who had the same story. They faced attitudinal challenges and physical barriers everywhere, and that didn't have to be there. And so I started to think about doing something about it, paying it forward by putting my athletic talents as a marathoner together and doing something that would shake up attitudes and become a challenge for people to think about removing barriers, to look at people away from disability and look at ability. The Man in Motion World Tour formed, and in a dream like that, it's a massive dream and concept, but it's impossible without the support of other champions. And aside from family and friends, UBC played a big role. Dr. Bob Highmarsh was one of the great supporters. He was the athletic director, he was a phys ed teacher, and he got involved in our committee. He supported me and brought UBC in. President Strangway actually hosted a reception during the beginning of the launch of our tour to get more people involved. They brought me to the faculty club, and they had the faculty reception. It was on the 3rd floor, and then they discovered, of course, that there was no elevator. And so here I was in my wheelchair, and the first level of the impact of the Man in Motion Tour, even before we started. happened right here at UBC. And what they did is they put me in a little dumbwaiter that was there for the restaurant people, and they would put food in and push a button, and it would miraculously arrive on the second and third floor. And so I was kind of crunched in like this, and they pushed the third floor button, but somehow it stopped because one of the cooks had pushed the second floor button, and he opened the door, and I popped out, and the guy was just completely shocked. He had no idea what was going to happen there. So these moments, they start, and of course the team grows, and we ultimately were able to launch. And really the launch of a big dream when you're looking to the future is critical. It's probably the greatest success because there's so many obstacles: fear, self-doubt, skepticism, the risk of over-planning. And at the end of the day, by moving forward and taking those first steps, you realize you're breaking through. And we broke through on that day. And another UBC alumni, Tim Frick on the left, was my coach. He graduated also in physical education, and we were leaving on the journey, that first stroke, and it continued all around the world. In Russia, we were on the Great Wall of China, bringing a message of hope into a country that really had shut out people with disabilities, and there were no human rights for them, and it was a ray of hope and possibility. Coming back across the country was a wellspring of support, and millions of dollars started to roll in, and ultimately those last few days when we came back to Vancouver were just phenomenal. And we finished our journey, and ultimately we started the next phase where the tour was over, but of course we had to continue to build awareness, continue to work on barriers and obstacles, and continue to think about new possibilities. Fortunately, UBC was still there with me and for me, and they encouraged me to come and continue on that journey as I received an honorary doctorate, but I was also appointed a National Fellow program here at UBC, which allowed me and has been my base for leadership for the last almost 30 years. And without that support, my continuing leadership and journey would not have been possible. To work and to pave the way with the Disability Resource Center at the University of British Columbia, so that there was a group of advocating, challenged professionals who actually helped build an institutional support, an inclusive environment, so thousands of students with disabilities could come in behind, and that impact has been profound year in and year out. To support the dream of a cure for spinal cord injury, to bring in endowments and encourage great leaders to be able to find the mysteries of neural regeneration and recovery of function, and to move it from a local collaborative institution to a global institution, one of the biggest spinal cord research programs in the world. And there's some incredible people here that I'd like to recognize. Obviously, Dr. Brian Kwon, who's an incredible champion at UBC and Vancouver Coastal Health. And then also we have the head of ICORD, Wolfram Tetzlaff, who's right here. And he's one of the great bright minds who's leading the research charge with Brian and others. And then someone has to take it beyond the local context and connect places around the world, researchers around the world and centers. And we have the CEO of the Rick Hansen Institute, and that's Bill Barable here as well. And so thrilled to be working with such a great group of champions and working towards putting more resources and keep bright leaders, young leaders like Brian Kwon, by applying $1 million from our foundation to build out more capacity for his incredible work and leadership. All these years since the end of the tour, we've had over $123 million worth of impact on the university through endowments, grants, and facilities and infrastructure. And it's been an amazing journey. We've had relationships with other faculty members, the faculty of the Sauder School of Business, and Morales here, and he's helped us think about new ways of doing business. The Faculty of Education, the Faculty of Human Movement and Kinesiology. Being an adjunct professor has been really awesome. And so that sets us to the present. Here we are. We've come a long way on two huge dreams. A UBC in a world that's it's more aware that disability is important. Attitudes are more positive. Infrastructure is more accessible. It's not perfect. It's more. And we've moved from an impossibility of a cure for spinal cord injury to the conditions being right for being able to drive forward to truly find a cure. And we have to continue to build on these attitudes. And I'd like to share a little video that kind of puts it in perspective about the right for accessibility for all. What I love about that video is it shows some really simple but normal things that people with disabilities have the right to be able to do. You know, to be able to get that perfect dress if you happen to have a disability and get in there and be served by a customer service agent who really knows how to treat people with disabilities, that the actual infrastructure is open enough for you to get there. If you want to go on a date, you can get into a restaurant. If you want to be able to be the first one into work and you're blind, you have that opportunity to be there yet again. If you want to go to a gym and get a great workout, you know, you don't have to go to a special gym. You can be in a normal gym just like anyone else. And these are the things that we want to paint in the minds of people, because if we don't have that vision of what's normal, you know, then any road will do. And once we realize that that's possible, we can start to envision where we can go over the next 100 years. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to kind of give you some thoughts of snapshot moments where I think we'll be able to be in the next 100 years. First of all, there's no question sport has been a huge part of my life, and sport is a powerful mirror for how society views itself. And the images of sport can either enable or disable. And I don't believe that we should have two classes of athletes. I think what we'll see is we'll see just athletes, whether they happen to have a disability or not. And we'll see in the Olympic Games, we will see athletes with disabilities as a full and representative part of the Olympic Games. And this is going to be a reality, because we won't want to see special classes of athletes in different kinds of games. We'll see them exist, but they won't be these big barriers. And we'll constantly see, whether it be at World Championships, Commonwealth Games, Olympic Games, that this inclusive environment where athletes are recognized and welcome will have a powerful thrust to billions of people around the world about this ongoing reality. I believe that we will find cures for spinal cord injury, and that people will be able to walk away again with full recovery in the next 100 years. I believe we have the critical mass, we have the leadership and the capacity, we've made progress, and there will be an acceleration that will be intangible and intuitive. And we'll see that the newly injured will have better treatments, and ultimately they'll prevent paralysis, and people will be able to walk away again. You will see those that are permanently paralyzed be able to go into clinical trials and treatment opportunities and have new regenerative tissue applied, and ultimately new therapies that help them walk again. I believe that the world's infrastructure in 100 years will be completely accessible and enabling for people with disabilities, and it will be fully rated and online so people can navigate through their world, and that they'll have an understanding of what level of accessibility that they're actually in place. Everything will be online and navigatable so that we'll be able to actually simply just push and go, free and enabled. A seamless level of accessibility, shopping, banking, your home security, mobility, everything converged, not segregated in technology today the way it is. Total inclusion, total convergence. And when we see smart homes, someone in a wheelchair will be able to navigate through the home, and things will open up, they will close, they will constantly modify as you go forward. You won't have to open a door because it'll recognize who you are. You know, your heat will turn down, your lights will turn off as you go out the door. You'll be able to summon your car, and your smart car will be there, and of course you'll have a chance to just see the car open up. You'll wheel into the back of the car, you'll strap in and push your GPS coordinates, and off you go with the smart car that takes you to where you need to go. While you're there, you'll be able to maximize your time and efficiency to be able to start to coordinate where your next date will be, or the kind of business solutions, and time will be a premium, and it will be optimized at every step of the way. Human rights around the world will be the norm, that people with disabilities will be, in every country in the world, absolutely completely supported, through not only the work that's currently underway with the United Nations, but nations will have responded to that challenge, and they will have embedded and implemented a safety net so that there will be no unintended discriminatory action imposed on people with disabilities. There's over 1 billion people on the planet living with a disability today. And in aging baby boomers moving towards this segment of the population, that's going to increase dramatically over the next 20 years. And we're going to see that continue that next 20 years into the future. And ultimately, we're going to see people realize, my gosh, this isn't just a human rights issue. This is an economic issue. This is an opportunity where people can actually provide great opportunities for employment and great customer service as well. I believe that stigmas will be removed and normalized in the next 100 years, so it will just be that we have a disability, but it's not a big deal. We won't be afraid to disclose the issue and deal with the barriers that are in place. And attitudes will be positive and enabling because we will know that we'll hear all these great stories about what can happen, no matter how big or how small. And our economy will be strengthened because we see disability as an opportunity. Employers will be able to attract and retain the great employees, and we'll be able to make sure that the economy is accelerated through product innovation. And what better place for product innovation than here at the University of British Columbia? And UBC will be a world leader in the field of accessibility. It will be completely accessible, not partially, not nicely accessible, completely accessible. It'll have an inclusive student body and faculty body and staff body. Will be representative of the population as a result of its work. It'll also be horizontally linked. Every faculty will be considering the issue of disability as an opportunity to educate, to do research, and to deal with innovation. I really believe in the next 100 years, UBC will be distinguished as the global leader in the field of not only spinal cord research to find cures, but clearly they will be in the field of accessibility. And I think about the future, and I look at some big land moments, that would be breakthrough dreams and ideas that will happen as a result of technology, innovation, and know-how that will symbolize the kind of possibilities for the future. I believe that someone with a spinal cord injury will be able to summit Mount Everest. I believe it's possible. And all we have to do is put together the right technology, the right know-how, and the right capacity, and that will happen. Just think of an opportunity to maybe have one of the Sherpas that have been injured in recent times, and instead of them being there, helping support other people's personal dreams, that we could actually help enable a Sherpa to be able to, who has a spinal cord injury, to be supported by his community and the world, to be able to summit Everest, to show that there are no boundaries on this earth that can't be crossed. That if a person with a disability can do that, what else can people do? And we can make sure that that becomes a global infusion to help power up new attitudes and possibilities. I also believe that a person with a spinal cord injury will go up into space, will be in the International Space Station, will leave the wheelchair behind. And if anyone gets a chance to see William Shatner tonight, you'll be able to have the vision and the imagination of what's possible, because we can make that happen. In a weightless environment, a person with a spinal cord injury is fully able to do everything just like anyone else. And that person could circumnavigate the world multiple times in a day to broadcast to billions of people around the world that there are no boundaries anywhere beyond this earth that can be crossed within the next 100 years. I believe one day the wheelchair will be something you'll see in a museum. I believe that UBC can be one of the leading innovators in engineering, in technology, to be able to find new propulsion technologies that help people move forward and to be able to have new ways to liberate their potential. And creativity is driven by our imagination. And the fact that William Shatner is speaking tonight is really interesting, because a lot of innovation started with Star Trek, the cell phone today. But interestingly, if you're a Star Trek not like I am, I remember the image of Commander Pike, who was assaulted by an alien. He became a quadriplegic. And if you kind of look at the propulsion unit he had, here's a sort of an image and a story where someone can go at warp speed to distant galaxies. They can take a person and disassemble them and then reassemble them down on a planet. But the spinal cord injured, or the person who's a quadriplegic, the commander is essentially in a gussed-up wheelchair that hasn't really changed at all. Now that kind of imagination, there or with the veteran who wheels off the spaceship in Avatar, has to shift, because that wheelchair that he pushed out of that spaceship in was not too dissimilar to mine. And we need to think about possibilities. We need to see a new reality, and we can create it, because I know anything is possible. So congratulations to UBC for 100 great years. This is an amazing moment in time, and I'm thrilled to be working with the university moving forward. And I can't wait for the next decades to unfold. And I know that my best work is in front, and it's because of that relationship. And the next 100 years, personally, probably my biggest dream and prediction will be that my grandchild, or one of my grandchildren, will be in the graduating ceremony, watching their great-grandchild graduate from UBC and wondering what kind of a legacy UBC will help create within our family as well. Thanks a lot, you guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, inspirational as always.
Thank you.
I guess I'd have we'll have questions from the audience, but I guess one question I'd have for you is, where do you see the I don't know if you can abstractly envision this, but on a scale of 1 to 10, if 10 would be that dream of your fully accessible community, where would you put that number today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that we're probably in about a 4 out of 10, maybe 5. Mm-hmm. And it's accelerating rapidly. And of course, why I sort of think about it a 4 or a 5 is because there are a lot of people, unless they're actually they come into this field, they make assumptions that, of course, it's a human right. Everybody, it's not a big deal anymore. We see the the wheelchair parking spots and whatever. But if you actually have a family member that is either in a chair, that has a mobility challenge, they could have arthritis, Parkinson's, MS, ALS, visual impairment, hearing impairment. You start to look at the cognitive challenges that are out there, and you see the barriers, and the barriers are massive. And it's not enough just to say that we think it's a human right. And the way that we make progress is we make sure that people realize it relates to everyone, and that we stay vigilant, and that this topic comes to the forefront on an ongoing basis. Right now, the issue of disability is fragmented by body part, by disease orientation or clinical diagnosis, and ultimately we don't see convergence of the size of the community and the issue against the common issues that we all share, together: awareness, attitudes, and accessibility.
How do you feel that that we in Canada are a leader in this, or do you think that how do we fit on the world stage?
Well, you brought up something that I was going to also mention for the future, is we won't be subjectively answering questions like that. We'll actually have objective metrics. We'll actually have a global index on accessibility and a rating based on great research, and I would expect and hope that UBC will be part of that, because we should be measuring communities across the country, around the world, and we should be measuring nations based on the checklist of critical elements that they put in place.
Does anybody have a question, or I don't have my tablet.
See someone? Yeah. Sorry, I can't quite hear you.
Can assist. It's a Canadian university thing, started in Victoria.
Yes.
And
yeah.
Is it one of your allies?
There they're totally engaged with UBC and people across the country, and yeah, it's fantastic. And that's one of the great parts of the progress to date, where people with disabilities is there's individuals and organizations that have found a niche, a gap, and they've started an organization to play a vital role. But if you really took a matrix and you saw, how diverse and complex those engagements are, the big challenge is to try to bring together collaboration and make sure that the power of the individual organization or leader is actually maximized by being able to share and find common points of intersect, and also create efficiencies and effectiveness and avoid duplication.
A question?
My name is Tyler Carlson. I just want to mention I met you 31 years ago.
Wow, that's so wild.
And so I was a little young at age 12, so I didn't really probably appreciate what you spoke of. That I haven't. I know about the Man in Motion tour. My dad, my mom. You were a hero to us back then. In whatever it was, 85, 87, I don't know, somewhere around there. And I just would like to express myself in front of everybody here, and especially to you, that thank you. Because it's not just that you don't have use of your legs, what you did, whether you have legs like me or whatever, it was inspirational to me at age 12.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that story. Well, it's stories like that keep you going too, right? You think you are making a difference, and then you just keep setting the bar higher every year. And hopefully we've got a long runway ahead still. Long way to go.
Yeah, well, Rick was kind enough to give a talk at my daughter's school last year, and we thought this would be a great thing for all the elementary school kids to see Rick come. And my daughter was in grade 4, and it turned out that the people that I think were fascinated and were so excited by the visit were actually the teachers who were exactly of this sort of genre. So Rick has a powerful impact on a lot of people. But I remember thinking that was really quite interesting.
Thanks, Brian.
We have an audience question, and this one is I'm going to pose to you. It was liked by many people. So, and the question is, who would Rick be today if your accident had not happened?
Great question. Wow. One thing I could say for sure is that I'd be probably in the field of engaging with people as an educator, as a coach, trying to help people move forward through my experiences in sport. That was my dream. It was before my accident was to go to university and to go to phys ed here at UBC and to be a coach or a teacher. So my scope of influence probably would have been a lot narrower, but I would have been actively engaged for sure in an education environment and working with young athletes and people. But would I trade my life for the use of my legs? Not a chance. No, not a chance. I feel like I'm one of the luckiest guys on the planet, and it was my accident that gave me the millstone to be able to ask important questions, to have great experiences, and make me realize it's not about using your legs in order to have a great life. It's about asking the important questions. It's about love and giving and receiving. It's about meaning and purpose. It's about having a passion, and it's about continually growing and learning as you go through this journey, and treat it as a precious gift. And it's also about your attitude and your frame of mind, not what happens to you in life, but what you do with it. And that's sovereignty that we hold, that we have to give up willingly. You can't control the nasty things in life that happen to you, but you sure can control how you view it, and how you view yourself as a human being.
Great. A question came in on, what do you find is most challenging to you to be in a wheelchair in Vancouver? Mm-hmm. And what would be the things that you would do to make immediate changes?
Yeah. I have all kinds of personal experiences, but still to this day, I still get people coming up and and I go to a restaurant and they'll bring a bill to the able-bodied person beside me. That's not a bad thing once in a while, but it's frustrating.
It's
It's
when
almost.
we had lunch, I think that happened.
I didn't mind that part. Thanks, Brian.
He
But
did
it's
pay.
so there's still that awareness, and then there's the physical barriers. You go, like for instance, my family, they created a family reunion reception downtown, and they booked a room, and we showed up, and it was up a flight of stairs, and there was no elevator access to get there. The whole family, was embarrassed. It caused incredible tension. And people did their best to try to accommodate. Someone hurt their back getting me up the stairs, and and it was a really challenging thing. You go to a facility and you go into a washroom, and there's 5 stalls, that are normal stalls, and then there's the one wheelchair stall. The 5 stalls are open and empty, and the wheelchair one is taken, and some buddy's in there reading a newspaper, loving this big stall, not thinking, oh yeah, that's there for a reason, and that's my pet peeve in life, and it really gets me very anxious. And of course, you hear stories about infrastructure and transportation plans, and somehow people think in the planning that it's okay to miss a stop from an accessibility point of view. And how is it that in today's world that we can still see that kind of thinking, that it's okay to miss a stop because people with disabilities can get off at the next stop, and then we'll spend hundreds of thousands of dollars with a parallel transit system and get them to wait for hours, and then to be able to then take them back to the place where they should have been able to get off like anyone else. And the barriers are still massive. And again, what happens when someone buys a condo, and they buy a condo, and someone hasn't envisioned that condo as a living in place opportunity for someone who will have many disabling conditions? I can tell you what happens. It forces someone to have to relocate or spend tens, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars in retrofits that are costly as opposed to minor modifications to live in place. And that's a state of mind and a consciousness, and it's ultimately how we live our life and how we conduct ourselves and how we do business. And if you do it right in the first place, what happens is you can probably sell that place for more money because it's more attractive for everybody, but then people can kind of stay in their homes and live a great life no matter what happens to them. And isn't that what everybody likes to do, wants to do, and why shouldn't we do it in this case?
Fantastic. Are there any other questions from the audience?
Yeah.
The City of Vancouver is going to be starting consultations soon on. The City of Vancouver is going to be starting consultations soon on housing accessibility as it relates to its long-term infrastructure development plan. Right. Your previous comments touch a little bit on some of your opinions about residential and commercial accessibility. I'm wondering if you could comment on what kind of advice you would give to the city as it begins thinking about those issues as we move forward in a very tangible sort of way.
Yeah, it's a great question and great comment, because as we start to look at housing and further levels of infrastructure in a city like Vancouver, it's one of the most beautiful places in the world, but we need to make it one of the most livable places in the world for everybody, not just for those who are able-bodied. And it's nice that we're really thinking about things like green transportation, and we're thinking about sustainable buildings from an environmental perspective, which I fully support. But where's the people side of that? And we need to sort of really institute some very different metrics and levels of checks and balances where people can be inspired to contain the creativity so that they're not unintentionally creating artificial barriers that exclude a whole population of people from being able to live and to play and to work. And so creating a BOMA or LEEDS-like certification program, which gives a rating of between bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and diamond, would be a spectacular solution to something like that, so that the city or the province or the federal government could then start to create incentives for people who have met levels of accessibility, and that there would be, every building would need to be assessed. And so we'd know where we're at, and then we could create a long-term 30 to 100-year plan to get to the Canada we want. And we could do it in multiple ways by mobilizing, the private sector as a positive opportunity, but creating incentives, and then also creating a charitable response and a human rights response for those that can't afford to pay, who they can still move forward to be able to achieve the goal through modifications and adaptivity. And so that's what I'd hope they do in that consultation process. And again, if you translated that to the development community, they would probably say, yeah, we'd like to do it. We'd like to also create a way, remove some of the friction, so create some incentives so we can do it. And that difference between must do through human rights and compliance, and should do because it's the right thing to do, is where the tension lies and the opportunity lies as well.
Great. Are there?
I see a question.
Well, maybe you have time for one more question.
You have a dramatic change in your mobility, but there's lots of people that have shades of change.
Yeah.
And how do you see how do you, like, I think when I look at you and listen to you talk, I think in terms of the dramatic change. How do you describe the other shades of gray? Like,
yeah.
You talk about impact in the planning process.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just for one group.
That's right.
Who are all the other groups?
Yeah. Well, as I said earlier, there's massive numbers of people with disabilities and different kinds of disabilities. If you put them into the big clusters, as I mentioned, there's those with mobility challenges, and that's everything from those who are in power wheelchairs, scooters, normal wheelchairs that you can push on your own. There's people who are in walkers, people on canes, and people who have limited mobility, but they can still go under their own power, and they have maybe balance or dexterity challenges, and there's others who are dealing with extreme pain or a combination of all the above. There's other individuals who have visual challenges as they move forward from being able to correct those visual issues with glasses, and others who have significant impairment, and considering the opportunity in those clusters to be able to accommodate. And then, as I mentioned, there's hearing loss, which is one of the fastest growing areas of disability amongst the elderly. And of course, by being able to accommodate and to consider an acoustically friendly environment, I know this from personal experience. One, I'm deaf in my left ear, which is why sometimes I can't hear questions. But my father-in-law, Patrick Reed, who unfortunately passed away at 91 in December, had a profound hearing loss because of his days, serving in the military. And towards the last number of years, he would actually be handicapped if we didn't consider the acoustic environment, that we actually had a restaurant experience in. And of course, he would sit there and he wouldn't enjoy himself because he couldn't hear what was going on. And that doesn't have to be. And if we're thinking about the continuity and these kind of core clusters, and we have some practical, that makes sense in each of those areas, then all these diverse interests can ultimately benefit, because we can actually capture some common ground and see barriers removed in a very dramatic way. So thanks for asking that question, because the real point of it is there's visible and then there's some invisible disabilities. Absolutely. And clearly that also reflects why Canadians, when they're polled, dramatically underestimate the number of people with disabilities in this country. And I think that's an important thing to consider. Also, a lot of people, when they're asked, they don't say that they have a disability because they perhaps have a stigma about it. They say, I don't have a disability. I've got some pain or mobility problems. But the question is, is it a disability? It can be, and it is in circumstances, but it's really ability that counts, right? And where are the barriers? And so trying to normalize that and remove that stigma so people aren't afraid to say, hey, you know what? In the last year, I've been working at this company for 20 years, but in the last year, I've had a small stroke, and I just can't quite get around that workstation properly. And if someone could just modify it, if I could say that I have a bit of a challenge, small accommodation, all of a sudden I'm in the game again, and everybody wins from it.
All right. Well, with that, we'll have to conclude. I want to point out that that today's program has been videotaped and podcasted, and to download this as well as the other programs that are being presented today, I would encourage you all to go to the alumni's UBC website, the www.alumni.ubc.ca. I would have been asked to point out that that today is not over. There are a few tickets available to the next two talks at 3 o'clock. The Future of Food Sources by Mira Dawala. I don't think she's serving any food, unfortunately, but I think which is a pity. And The Future of Robotics with Elizabeth Croft. And these tickets can be purchased downstairs. And of course, many of you know that tonight at 5 o'clock, the event will culminate with William Shatner's talk about a life driven by curiosity. And I think there are still tickets available potentially for this as well. So, and everybody is invited to enjoy a complimentary Centennial Cupcake.
Nice.
Located outside
Nice.
the north entrance, and by the food trucks you can find that. And I want to thank Rick for joining us today, and for it's always I've heard you speak many times. It's always an inspiration to listen to you speak. I think, and I want to thank all of you for coming and attending this event. So thank you.
Thanks, Brian. So, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. And I'd also, I'd like to, again, encourage you, if you want to make a difference, come onto our website at rickhansen.com, share our hashtag #AccessForAll, and some of those videos that you saw that were really simple and compelling. If you believe that accessibility is a right, every one of you can just spread the word. And I have an amazing team. Dormy Elling is the COO of our Rick Hansen Foundation, and she's a UBC alumnus. And we also have Nadine and Connie, who are here today, and I'd like to recognize them because they're keeping the movement going, and I get to take all the credit, but they do the hard work. And thanks, Dormy and Connie and Nadine, for doing an outstanding job. So rickhansen.com #AccessForAll, and push it out, and let's get everybody together on this issue and keep going so that 100-year vision can become a reality. Thanks a lot, you guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you.